Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you all. I'm Rabbi Andrew Allen Bentley, the Rabbinic Cynic. You're listening to the Rabbinic Cynic. You're watching the Rabbinic Cynic. Today on Fridays, I like to talk about the weekly biblical portion that Jewish people read on Shabbat. This week's Torah portion is Chayei Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. Really, it talks about the end of Sarah's life. But I want to go back a little bit to something a little personal to me. As some of you may know or may not know, one of those diagnosis that not a happy one, not a great one. So I had to come to terms with that. Like I was told I have a form of blood cancer, CLL, if anyone knows what that is. And then I was told about bad prognostic markers, the whole, all the doctors speak that kind of drives you crazy. And it's a challenge. And it was a challenge in my life, my family's life. And so as a rabbi, I've always dealt with this personally counseling people, so I had a hard time understanding my own approach to suffering. And so I started studying. I did some therapy. I do my podcast. This is kind of therapy for me at the same time. But what I wanted to understand was, how do I move forward given this type of diagnosis? This when I realized that my whole life has to change. I have to change my lifestyle. My life may not have even be as long as I thought it would be as I was, as you're younger. I was always told life goes downhill after 50, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't go downhill after 50. Maybe it actually goes uphill after 50. And so we have to understand, what does it mean to suffer? What does suffering mean? So in this week's Torah portion, Abraham, I'm going to go back a little bit. I want to talk about Abraham and Sarah and how Abraham dealt with the death of Sarah. But what I want to talk about first is Holocaust survivors. And I see Holocaust survivors, and as we've been talking about anti-Semitism and the repercussions of that, go back to the 1940s, and you see this generation, the Holocaust survivors are dying off. And so we have to understand, what is it about them? How did they survive? How did they survive? How did they move forward after after experiencing such terrible, unimaginable atrocities, seeing their whole families wiped out? And so there's an interesting stories of people that I have met over the years, Holocaust survivors. In my capacity as a rabbi, I know a lot of Holocaust survivors. I've learned a lot from Holocaust survivors, and the one thing that they have is this will to survive, this sense of purpose. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor himself, and also considered the father of this logotherapy. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he described how Holocaust survivors, the ones that survived, found some purpose in their lives to survive. Obviously, as I said before, some of the Holocaust survivors, obviously, that was beyond their control. But even further than that was, what did they do after the Holocaust when they had to rebuild their lives? And what they did was, many of them didn't talk about it for years and years, even to their children, not until they got older. And so there's something that we could really be learned from this, is that what were they doing is that they were rebuilding their lives. They were rebuilding their future. And so when we look at Abraham. So Abraham is a beautiful example of that. I want you to keep in your mind the idea of the Holocaust survivors and how they rebuilt their future. And then I want to talk about Abraham a little bit and what did Abraham do. So in this week's Torah portion, Sarah dies. His beloved wife, it took him years before they could have a child together. And we just talked about last week, we talked about how he was told by God to take his firstborn, his child Isaac, who they wanted to have for so long. And Sarah, the word Yitzchak, means the child born, everyone's going to laugh at me that I could have a child so young. And then Abraham was given this devastating charge by God, you shall sacrifice your son. In the end, obviously, we know that he didn't. But in this week's Torah portion, his beloved wife Sarah dies. Chayei Sarah means the life of Sarah, but really it talks about the death of Sarah and how Abraham dealt with the grief of losing his wife. And a lot can be said in the Torah portion itself. It talks about what he did. He mourned for Sarah. She died, he mourned, and in his grief, the very next verse says he got up and he made plans. He made plans of how he should bury her. He made plans. He realized that he didn't have any established plot of burial. It's the whole story of the cave of Machpelah, the burial place of our forebearers, of the Jewish forebearers in Hebron, just south of Jerusalem, quite south of Jerusalem. It's about a half-hour drive, 40-minute drive south of Jerusalem. But in that cave, so what did Abraham do? He planned for the future. He didn't look back. He had his grief. He mourned, but he didn't look at the past. He planned for the future. He rebuilt the future for future generations, for his people. He wasn't waiting for God. God said to him, oh, look, you're going to be the multitude of nations. But he just lost his wife. He has one son. Things don't seem that stable for Abraham. And the idea is it's not, Judaism is unique in that it isn't maybe no. I don't. There are other. I know there are other religions that think it's all about human action. Buddhism, for example, believes in this idea that you're in charge of getting out of your own suffering, of recognizing your own suffering. Abraham did the same thing. Abraham got up and he did something. He negotiated this long negotiation to get that plot of land, the cave of Machpelah and that whole area. And he didn't want to take it from free. They loved him there and they were going to give him for free. No, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to build the future for myself, for my family. Noah, on the other hand, didn't do that. Noah got stuck in the past. He kept looking back at the past. And, we see that last kind of very difficult time of Noah. In contrast, we always bring that contrast. Then what did he do? Noah couldn't get over the fact that everyone he knew had died in the flood, except for his family. So he built a vineyard and he got drunk. That was kind of the epitaph of Noah. But the epitaph of Abraham was not. He had more children. He built a new life. He moved forward and he built a new future. And so I think this is a very important idea to understand, and we can look at that in modern times in how the Holocaust survivors, many of whom, Viktor Frankl is an example, right? Holocaust survivor, invented logotherapy, invented a form of therapy that teaches you that you need to get over the suffering that you've had, any kind of imaginable suffering. You have to find purpose in your life. You have to look to the future, not look back at the past, look back at the regrets. And this is, for me personally, in my life, that's what I learned how to do. I was a person that often spent times looking back at the past. Oh, I've had a blessed life, really, and what am I complaining about? Everyone has challenges. Some people have challenges far worse than I do. I am lucky to have good health insurance. I am lucky that I am able to get into treatment. There are many people in this country, in my neighborhood, in the Coachella Valley where I live, in the United States of America, in countries around the world, who would get this same diagnosis and they would die quickly because they don't get the health care that they need. So I decided I'm gonna stop feeling sorry for myself, and I'm gonna read about this. I'm gonna learn about Viktor Frankl and Holocaust survivors, and take inspiration from the Holocaust survivors that I have learned from over the years. The ones who, before they started talking about the past, the ones that before they started talking about the past and teaching the next generation what the Holocaust was, what it meant, why we should never let it happen again, they built their future. They had new families. They built it from the ashes. The Holocaust survivors in droves kept out of the state of Israel. They went to Israel and they built the state of Israel. They fought. Some of these people it was just a few years where they were emaciated. They were hungry. They were weak, but they were able to then. They were put into camps by the Allies because no one wanted to do it. No one wanted the Jews. No one wanted us. And they ended up in the state of Israel. And they built the state of Israel out of that. They built a future. And many came to America. They built a future here. They built businesses. They started They went to Hollywood and started film industries and everything that they did, they accomplished here in the United States and in England and in Europe and all these other places. This is what these Holocaust survivors did. Most of them never really talked about it until later on in their lives. And I think that's an important thing to understand, is that they built the future first. Before you can look back at the past, you have to build your future. And you shouldn't look back at the past. Unless when you see in the past, you see things that you see in the present, things happening like we're seeing in the world today. We're seeing things, we're seeing warning signs today that happened we talked about this on Tuesday, that happened in the past. But before you can move forward, you have to build a better future for your families, for your children, for yourselves. I may not be here to see the fruition of the future of my children, or people that I have taught, people I've influenced over the years, maybe not influenced, maybe positive, negatively, I don't know. But at the same time, that's the important lesson of Abraham. Abraham got up and he did something. Abraham got up and he planned for the future, and that future built the three Abrahamic religions. He built monotheism. He built this idea of a world of justice, a world of whatever you want to say. We could talk about organized religion. This is not about organized religion. This is about learning about the stories of our forebears and how they can inspire us. And in the same way, we have to look back at the generations that came before us. The generation of the Holocaust, I think, is an important generation to understand, to learn about. How did they survive? How did they build on their future? And the way they did that was through building a future first and then looking back at the past. We're told that we're not supposed to just dwell on the past. We're supposed to look for the future, to build in the present, build a better future. And what comes with that is climate change, is dealing with climate change. We have to build a future for our children, right? We have to build a future for our children, understand where we're going. Understanding how we can build it, understanding that we have to look beyond ourselves and beyond feeling sorry for ourselves like Noah did. Noah felt sorry for himself and he got drunk and that was it. That's his epitaph. Abraham's epitaph was not. It was to move forward. It was to build. And we need to do that. We need to build. We need to take that inspiration from that generation of the Holocaust that has died off, and we need to build a better future. But at the same time, we still do need to remember the past, but not necessarily dwell on it. Not to say the past was so much better. That's another thing that I think we can learn from the Holocaust survivors. If they dwelt on the past, what are we dwelling on? People are talking about, and now I'm gonna go off on a little tangent. It's a related tangent. But why is the past? Why is 200 years ago or 100 years ago better than the world that we're living in today? Why is that? I don't know. I want to understand the answer to that question. Why do people say, let's make America great again? Or let's go back to the values of the forebears, the values of the founding fathers of the United States of America. They were slave owners. I don't want to go back to their fucking values. Really? I don't. I don't want to dwell on that past. Why are we stuck in the 50s? Why are we stuck in this vision of a world of exclusivity, where Jews and African Americans and other minorities, Latinos, all these minorities, Asian Americans, all these other minorities, why do we want to go back to that past? What is so special about that past? How's that going to build a better future for your children? I mean, if you feel like you're a threatened group, maybe that's going to build a better... but the ones that you see that are most vocal are standing on the 405 freeway doing the Nazi salute. And again, this is the lesson that we can learn from the past. But you can't say, well, the past was so much better in certain ways. It was not. I think we're slowly building a better future. And I like politicians, I like leaders, I like people, artists who talk about the future, who talk about how we're going to build a better future. And they're actually doing something in the present to build that. Because what we do now builds that better future. So with that better future, I'm going to see you on Tuesday for a better future. This is going to be my little Thanksgiving special, talking about what we're grateful for, talking about the idea of gratitude. And with that, I wish you a wonderful weekend. Live long and prosper and find yourselves a better future. Look to this present for that better future. Shabbat Shalom, and have a wonderful, beautiful weekend. Take care. Bye.